Have you ever wondered why architects spend so much time talking about form and function in school, but you're really wondering where do you find it in the industry? Well, this is the video where I'll talk about that. Hi, I'm Brandon with MotionFORM. This is a channel for architects and designers. Subscribe if you like this. As I'm going through this topic of form and function, I'll be talking also about on my new channel, I'm the Studio, where I actually start to break down some of the form and function of my daily operations as a channel and YouTuber. And I'll put that into the description as well so you can be a part of the conversation with what's happening there. So first and foremost, I'd like to talk about the fact that form is beautiful, function is effective and efficient. And those two things from the beginning days of civilization with architecture are the concerns and considerations. We're not just making buildings, we're finding ways for our ideas and experiences, feelings to come back and work together. So it's not something new. However, we're thinking about how does this affect the day-to-day life? Well, let's go back into it and speak it more specifically. So the house, which is the base of architecture, we're having like a roof, we're having sides, protecting from the elements in nature. It's a very much functional purpose. And if you think that function might be saying, oh, I just like it to be very beautiful. Wait till the rain falls inside of your house, then you'll really be concerned about the idea of function. At the same time, when you see something like a brutalist building of concrete that is for maybe some housing projects, and you look and you say, wait a minute, that's so dead, like people don't want to be there, but it's actually very effective, but it's horrible. And that's the world of pure functions. Some people said from the time I was starting my school about the divide between engineers and architects, that engineers are really much about function, architects are so much about form. I don't think it's ever that straight, cut and dry, but I think you'll understand that this is something that we can both benefit from having a good balance on. I'm going to start with form because I'm looking at the reason why form is important. Form is the issue at hand when we're looking at something that we could just craft with our hands and it'll be beautiful. Going from pottery to metalwork, whether we're talking about how the outside of a building looks to how the interior spaces work, how are the materials for the floor and the walls, how do the spaces divide and play with light in the space. That's part of your form. And that is a whole range of thought that you'll be spending time with a person if you're having a client, or if you're creating maybe an idea in school, or just maybe a concept piece for your ideas in architecture. You'll be thinking about, hey, how does that form put together? How does something beautiful come from what is the idea and what's that space? At the end of the day, with your form exercise, you understand that for the architectural world, it does need to satisfy function. And what that looked like in school was that people would wait to the end of the project to put doors and windows on a project, make sections. However, just like in school, just like in the real world, like that sort of project, it's shallow. We know that architecture is a very applied science. We love art, we love sculpture, and we think architecture should have some incredible parts about that. And that's in the world of form, but we know that that's not all. And we know that the best architecture goes a step further. Okay, that's the beauty of form. Form like the sculpture that you can experience. But now this leads into look at pure function. We all enjoy computers. In fact, the first computers were entirely unenjoyable. So civilization had advanced with like small little abacus. And then, in the 20th centuries in the 21st century, we started to be going back and forth as we would go from looking at these big computers with vacuum tubes into these really small iPhone-sized devices. And so there's a whole world of function that is part of a series of histories from what engineers were to what now they can be. And it's now very much in our society that engineering is supposed to be beautiful. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, it was, and then it wasn't. You'll go back to looking at, of course, previous architecture. You look at Roman aqueducts and their bridges. Like these bridges, this Roman empire spreading around, finding ways to expand their territory, or different civilizations in different places finding ways to use those materials, they had to have a sense of effectiveness. But you just don't just toss this material above another material, bamboo against bamboo. There's got to be some sort of way of how things work. The beauty of how math works together has been one of the reasons how forms start to enter in this area. But the basic idea of something being able to functionally work, something having ability to be engineered, to be beautiful, be effective at what it does, that is really the heart of great engineering. And the link to math, which it actually can be quite beautiful, can be swept away over generations, like with the Industrial Revolution, where people were just building all these houses. Let's build, or let's make this. To the point where now you're seeing that the first, automobile, people wanted to have that experience, but it's clearly very much about an engineering thing happening. It's very functional, but the form is lacking. Now let's go closer and look into where the problem lies, where form and function are totally on separate pages. When form and function work together, you could say this is maybe someone just for their own purpose saying, I want to make something and then I want to make it look beautiful. Or if you see someone, I want to make something beautiful, oh, then I want to use it. But if you start saying, wait a minute, let me just get more and more efficient. Let me make something so incredibly useful. And let me just stop thinking about if it looks nice, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, there's something that's going to happen that is going to be with this purely functional thing that's going to actually forget some of the concepts that are really important, not just in form, but in functional things. For instance, materials have to work with other materials for most architectural pieces. And if there isn't some sort of harmony and order, like that, art actually preserves the science of it. The way that woodworking works together, or metal and joinery, or concrete, like these things being figured out with the functionality are going to have a better result. At the same time, this form world where people just start to say, oh, look, I have this curvy building, and because of my structural steel and my ability to do things with concrete, I'll just do whatever and I won't ever have to worry about the structure again. That's also very problematic because, it's like it'll lead people, in one sense, public opinion, to have like people just making very crazy architecture that has no basis. And then, when there are bills for something to be built, it's always like impossible. But I think, even if I look at terms of like Zaha Hadid's work, I look at the engineers Arup and sort of how they're put together like different ideas for how that structural will mix with the form. And so the idea is, just being able to do it because concrete can go in this shape or something without ever having that, hey, let's get this calculated and be like mathematically beautiful, which is efficient. The idea is without that sort of basis, it's going to actually produce lots of residual issues. Now, here is the problem on the other side, the amalgamation. The amalgamation issue is about looking where we're saying, I'm going to make a building that's just a balded piece of paper, not insulting Frank Gehry. I think there's some great ways that you can create with like this emotion. But if you do that and you don't know how to build, then you're just going to put like structural columns inside like this crumpled place. It's like, that's actually not going to work in the long term. First of all, I don't think people really people can see shadow architecture. The thing about Frank Gehry is that he can build, he can create the spaces and beauty, and you'll see that in his architecture, from going from the Guggenheim, Bilbao to other of his places. It's, the idea is maybe they're working in a different level with form, but the fact that it works functionally is an incredible experience. And so here, there's also the amalgamation where people will make an entirely functional shed and just paint something on the outside. Obviously that's very obvious, but it's also obvious when someone is just throwing in the structures, throwing in the underlying form. So I say all this to say that you are now seeing this form perspective, this function perspective, and understanding, like, where do they divide? What are the problems? So why and how can we bring those together? Well, I think it starts with respect. I think it starts with respecting the areas that you don't know. Like, you could be a designer and be able to craft intricate spaces, work with materials, and how you will craft, pretty much sculpting a space. But early on, you'll need to know, hey, what's going to be the cost and function wise for this space. Some architects will be very much about program and how something works programmatically or budget wise. Or some architects have more freedom with form and how you will create something very beautiful and then come back to that. But the idea is knowing early, with respect for those other trades, talking with the engineer, talking with different people who have different understandings in those areas. Those are going to inform that creativity. So actually, the most beautiful spaces will be where you're designing something formally wonderful, aesthetically pleasing, but also it will start meeting with the engineering concerns as well. And then when you look at the engineering perspective, of course, we all love Calatrava and look at those sort of spaces, like those large bridges, and it's almost like it's pure structure, but there's beauty in structure, But the idea is that was a consideration beforehand, before someone just goes off with a bridge, I'm a civil engineer or something, says that they will actually be saying, how can this be beautifully woven with the fabric of the city? These are concerns that will help any young designer, any design project, to have this consideration of form and function together. And so as an architect, I'm telling you, this is something that is valuable. It's valuable to keep the conversation and to keep valuable into your work. And that's another reason why I'm really announcing again that I Am the Studio being a different channel, because I think it's definitely about more functional wise. And it goes into talking about software like for Rhino, for Revit, for SketchUp. I'll be going into tutorials, how to use them best. There'll be resources. There'll be ways you can get access to my courses for premium, understanding of how to use those, my workshops as well. I'll be going to a lot of content on YouTube, so you can just watch and scroll and all that. So go ahead to the I Am the Studio channel and subscribe. And on this channel, it will be some of the things you love the most. On this channel, people just love the 3D printing, the fabrication, and parametric design. I'll be continuing that here. There'll be a couple shows in between the two. This is my channel that I'll definitely maneuver with some of the other people, like Think Parametric. They're incredible software. I'll give a link for their projects and their courses for creatives and architects. The thing is, this is an incredible platform in YouTube, and I just really want to be invested. So thank you again for watching. If you got a lot of this video, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to this channel, click the bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.